Great. Thank you so much, Victor and Megan. So if everyone can turn to page 45, I am going to talk about project site ownership, acquisition, or lease. And this is checklist item number 10. Now, we recognize a project site may include multiple land parcels with different situations. These instructions cover requirements for each parcel, recognizing projects may involve a combination of these. 1, the applicant owns the land. 2, the applicant is proposing to acquire land. 3, the applicant does not own the land, but will enter into a lease agreement with the public agency that owns the land. And 4, the applicant does not own the land, but will construct the project and then immediately upon completion, turn the park site back over to the landowner. And please note here that landowner must also be an eligible public agency. So the landowner will carry out the long-term operation and maintenance and ensure public use. This scenario is actually called a turnkey project. If your land is on land that you own, you'll simply provide a copy of one of the documents outlined in number 1 here on page 45, such as a copy of the deed that clearly demonstrates the applicant owns the land. If you're proposing to acquire land to become the landowner, we ask that you submit the items outlined in number 2, which are 1, a county assessor's parcel map clearly identifying which parcels will be acquired, and 2, a letter from the willing seller indicating the intent to sell the property contingent upon a grant award. I want to point out a very important point about projects involving acquisitions. The land sale price cannot be higher than fair market value, and state funds cannot be used, even in part, to acquire property above that fair market value. So an appraisal will be required before a grant contract can be issued, and this is to confirm that fair market value. For projects where the land will not be owned by the applicant, which I discussed earlier as scenario number 3 or number 4, please follow the lease and turnkey agreements document, which is found on the program website under technical assistance. If you are thinking about this, please review that document after the webinar and then contact your competitive review project officer for guidance. When contacting your project officer, please make sure to attach a completed checklist that is found in the lease and turnkey agreements document, along with any agreements for review with the required checklist sections highlighted. Now, please use that chat feature as we've been asking you to do. And if you have any questions specifically on project site ownership, before I hand it over to Natalie, I'm going to check in with Victor to see if anything popped up while I was speaking. Victor?
So thank you. There's a question about applicant capacity and how that gets scored. So let me take you back to the page of the guide where that is relevant in the criteria. And if you go back to page 27, criteria number 9B on page 27. So number 9B says OGALs will use the information provided in the entire application to assess if project completion, as well as 30 years of adequate operation and maintenance, appears to be achievable. So in an extremely rare situation, if it appears that the project cannot be achieved, either based on some type of recent issue that's occurred with an agency where the capacity is severely questioned, and you'll know if that's you, because if you're not really hearing from our office and there's like significant concern, then I don't think you'll have to worry. But we would there are very few agencies. I mean, most of the local agencies statewide do a tremendous job. Rarely do we have a local applicant that is not capable of completing the project. Okay, so I just want to make that caveat that it's very rare to be disqualified based on capacity. But the applicant capacity section is really designed as a guide to make sure that the applicants fully think through the project, especially what it takes to operate and maintain a project. You'll be surprised that over the last 20 years, there are a few cases where an operation and maintenance budget is not established. The agency was not aware of what it costs to actually operate and maintain the project. Great example is an aquatic center. If you're thinking of building an aquatic center, as most of you know, those are very expensive to maintain and operate. So we would encourage you to identify similar types of aquatic centers, talk to those agencies, ask them how much their budget is, what does it cost, so you can have a really good understanding of what it will cost to operate it and maintain that aquatic center. And we're actually asking you in the applicant capacity section that was just covered to identify what funding source and amount it will take to operate and maintain that aquatic center, for example. And that's really to make sure that the eyes are wide open, that everything's fully thought through. What we're trying to avoid is awarding a grant and then the question is, well, how do I maintain it? How do I pay to maintain it and operate it? So that's the real goal of the applicant capacity section. But under criteria number 9B, if there are some serious issues with the elsewhere in the application package, such as a really simple example is that you're trying to acquire the property, but we discover when we ask for the willing seller letter that the seller is no longer willing to sell. I mean, obviously that's a case where it appears that the project is no longer achievable, and for that reason it can get a lower priority in the ranking under criteria number 9B. Okay, so great question. Thank you very much. Okay.
All right. Thank you, Victor. Now we are on checklist item number 11, the concept level site plan. And this is on page 46 of your guide. So the first bullet point provides instructions on the site plan drawing, which depicts the location of the project deliverables in the park. I want to point out that it does not need to be construction documents or any professional rendering. Simply a bird's eye view, could be pencil drawing, clip art, crayon, it's okay. All of those things are acceptable to us. All we really care about is, can we see where you are planning to put your recreation features and major support amenities within your project boundary? So that's all that we would really need to see. And we've seen effective plans with a variety of different kinds that have been sent to us. So just keep that in mind. You don't have to have professional drawings done for the purposes of our concept level site plan. The second bullet on this page refers to construction of new buildings. So these are like new recreation centers, new community centers. For any kind of new building that you're doing, at least 75% of the building's square footage must be for recreational purposes, only to be funded by the Regional Park Program grant funds. The building and its square footage should be indicated on your site plan. If more than 25% of this building will be devoted to non-public recreational space, different funding must be used and identified in the funding sources form, and an explanation should be attached to the site plan, just so we can see how it's laid out, and also that we can, if it is over that threshold of the no more than 25%, should be devoted to non-public recreational space. We just want to have you guys paint that picture for us, and you can indicate it by, you know, shading out that particular area and saying, that's the area, we know we're over our limit, but we have dedicated other funds from outside of this grant that are going to be paying for that portion that puts us over that threshold. So again, that's only for construction of new buildings, that at least 75% needs to be for recreational purposes, and 25% can be devoted to non-public recreational spaces. And those are things like lobby areas, hallways, meeting rooms, office space, storage, and restrooms. So with that, we're going to move on to the next checklist, item number 12, which is photos and copyright license agreement. Photos are requested at the project site, and we ask that one panoramic photo should be included. And these photos may be used to showcase if your grant is awarded. We like to show the before and after impacts of the projects that we fund. So a really neat way that really helps, you know, portray your project and the impact of it is to make sure that you're including a background point of reference in your panoramic photo to help really show that transformation that's occurring. The guide mentions providing up to 4 8.5 by 11 sheets with photos. However, as we mentioned earlier, that's really no longer relevant because applicants are now going to be uploading your photos directly into the submittable application system. So with that, just please make sure that you upload at least 4 photos directly into the submittable application system. And we also welcome community-based planning photos as well, but that's not a requirement, but you're welcome to submit those if you choose so. And the copyright license agreement, that is on page 47. That covers all the photos that you're submitting. It doesn't have to be signed by the authorized representative, but it just needs to be signed by the person who, you know, in your department that can approve our office the rights to use the photos that you're submitting if we would like to showcase your project. Okay, Victor, is there anything that you would like to address out loud before I turn it over to Adela?
There's a good question from Rachel. I'm not going to get into the details of that question, but I just want to throw something out there. If you're looking at lease agreements or turnkey agreements, meaning that you do not own the property and you're not planning on acquiring the property, make sure that the landowner is, you know, qualifies for this program as a public agency or utility. And also, even more important, if you're looking at a turnkey means the transfer of the grant agreement after the project's complete. So the turnkey has to be to an eligible grant recipient. So if the agency that you're trying to turn over the grant agreement to for the remainder of the 30-year public operation and maintenance requirements is not an eligible applicant, it will not be an eligible recipient of a turnkey agreement. Okay, so checking with your project officer if you're trying to do a lease agreement or especially a turnkey agreement, and the recipient is not an eligible applicant. Okay, so we'll have to work that out with you and get more information. Thank you.